Good. So your next speaker is actually going to be someone that I'm interviewing, and the reason I'm doing that is because he's got so much valuable insight as to what makes businesses tick. And the reason he's got so much insight is because he's conducted, wait for it, over 117,000 business audits. That's a lot. That is a lot of business audits. That is a lot of assessment, which means he's privy to a lot more data, a lot more information. He can spot trends and patterns that you or I might not be able to spot. He's also, I've got to shout him out for this, he's also an incredibly generous human being. He donated very generously to our chosen charity, Basket Brigade, last year. His donation alone helped us feed. We fed over 700 families last year, and his donation alone fed over 150 families in need at Christmas. So I think he deserves a round of applause for that. So I guess you could say it's been a long time coming. We've known each other about 15 years. But I can finally say, please welcome to the Expert Empire stage, Mr. Jay Allen, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, grab a seat. So, as I said, Jay's assessed 117,000 businesses. So I'm going to try in the next 30 minutes to extract as much valuable information out of him for you, for us as I can. You say, hello, by the way, welcome.
Hello, my friend.
You say that 80% of business owners are wrong. It's quite a bold statement. Why would you say that?
Well, again, everything that I share is data-driven as opposed to emotional-driven. And I know that as a business owner, we can often get so caught up in the weeds that we think our business is so unique. If I had £1 for every time that said, yeah, but in my industry,
my business is different. Yeah.
I'd be okay. So using the data that we've got from 119,000 as it is today, business audits that we've conducted, we've got a mass amount of data to be able to understand as to where people are, what are people doing, how did COVID and lockdown impact people's decision making. And quite simply, you can put every business in every sector, not just here in the UK, but globally, into one of 5 categories. There are 1% of businesses in every sector, in every industry right now that are nailing it, that are well above the curve, that are smashing all the targets, that are industry leaders. And if you sit for a minute and think about who is the global leader in your industry that you're trailing along the tails of?
They're the 1%. Right?
1%.
Yeah, okay.
There's a further 4% of businesses that are close on their heels, that are doing really well, that are above the average growth rate, but perhaps haven't automated or semi-automated and are still a little bit seasonal, that are above the average, but not quite in that elusive 1% club. And there's a further 15% of businesses in every sector, in every industry, that are more traditional style growth patterns. Yeah. But you've only got to look at Companies House to be able to understand people's end-of-year returns, to be able to see 60% of businesses are stagnant, are doing okay, they're making 1%, 2%, 4% growth,
but that's the average, yeah.
In an environment where there's 10% increase in cost.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, 20% of businesses in every sector, in every industry, close and fail. So unless you set up in business to either be average or fail, why on earth would you ever be worried about your local competitor when the chances are that they sit in either the 60% or the 20% bracket?
Yeah. So when you say 80% are wrong, what do you see that they're doing wrong as a generalisation? What are the patterns that you see that they're doing quote-unquote wrong?
I guess the simple answer is that who here went all the way through mainstream education, be that junior, senior, or uni, or college, or who here had 14, 15 years of formal education learning how to be able to build, grow, and scale a business as part of their upbringing?
Yeah, no one. Well, one person. One person, yeah. Nobody.
I would argue yourself because of your mother and your parentage and this and the other type of stuff. So maybe two.
Yeah, and even then, you know, the education I had wasn't how to start, build, grow, scale a business. The tools and the skills that I learned were extremely valuable to help me. They were transferable into that field. But, you know, I never learned. I said yesterday, I didn't learn about good financial management and cash flow forecasting, which I know is one of many things that you talk about. I didn't learn that until 2015, when I was already 7 years into business doing it badly. So, you know, I think it's, we're all incredibly undereducated when it comes to business. And, you know, a lot of people start a business because they're passionate about it, they're excited about it, but they don't have necessarily the foundational knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely. And the simple fact is that's the majority of us. We took the brave decisions to be able to step away from a job or just over broke and stepped into this world of unknown. You know, as a veteran, I would gladly give anyone the medals on my chest for anyone that's taken that brave decisions to be able to say, do you know what? Sod it, I'm going to do it myself. But the simple fact is we're winging it. We're winging it with the best intention, but no one's given us a rule book. It's just like parenting. No one gave us a rule book. We're working it out as we go along. And the simple answer is that the majority of people are winging it on the premise that they look at everything else external and then they make a judgment. Am I doing as well as them, or do I need to learn from them? As opposed to looking internal to be able to say, what is the best in the world doing and what can I learn from that 1%?
Yeah, and I think the thing that certainly frustrates me, I know you feel the same about this, Jay, is that it's not always bad businesses that fail. Sometimes it's good businesses with good products and good services and lovely people running them that can really make a difference, and yet they still fail. I know you've identified that there are a few common flaws that you see.
Sure.
What are those? What are the flaws you see? By the way, I'm making an assumption. I think it's a fair one. Everyone in this room has a good business. And by good business, I don't mean it's well run necessarily. I mean, you've got a good business that does good things for the people, for the world. So what are the flaws you see in those good businesses that cause them to fail?
It's a great question. The simple answer is that whilst most of us are doing a good job, we're probably doing all of the right things in the wrong order that's preventing us from making the progress. So again, from the data, and we've collected this for 7 years full-time and then for the last 4 years commercially, from the data we've been able to put into 3 categories from some big business failures. The first business that we researched was the closure of Woolworths.
Right.
You know, 93 years old, 37,000 staff, 4 billion turnover, and went broke. If we can't learn some lessons from the likes of that, then there's something wrong. So
I'm curious, why do you think Woolworths went broke? I've got my views and my opinions. What's your view?
Brilliant. Can we do the whiteboard? Is that all right?
You may. Go for it.
So
I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the show. This is great for me, because I go, you're doing all the work. I'm just sitting here asking a few questions.
If we were going to do the 3 flaws that cause businesses to either stagnate or glass ceiling, or grow or go broke, they fit into 3 categories. 54% of businesses fail because they don't have a business plan. Now, don't get me wrong, you can't tell me that Woolworths failed because it didn't have a business plan. Woolworths' business plan was 13 years old when they failed. There were 2 fundamental things that had happened in the 13 years before they'd last gone for seed funding and they'd written a business plan, because they'd associated a plan with cash. Amazon had come along and the internet had exploded. And yet the business plan hadn't adapted to the environment that they were in.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, there is a couple of caveats when it comes to business plan. First of all, the business plan has to be up to date. It has to be known throughout the business. And I'm not saying share everything with everybody, but everybody on the team needs to understand where we're heading. And in the case of places like Norton Motorcycles or Tyrac, there was a maverick. They ended up with a senior hire to replace a natural wastage or somebody that had moved on, who'd come into the business and decided, I need to show who I am. And instead of following a business plan, one person in a senior position had said, rather than picking up the reins of where everybody else had left off, they felt the need to go off on a tangent. So a business plan has to be known, it has to be followed, and it has to be up to date. Okay, and 54% of businesses that fail haven't got a documented plan. 37% of businesses fail because of what I call the people, system, process dichotomy. You either haven't got systems and processes in the business, or you've paid so much attention to systemizing and processing everything that you've disenfranchised the people within the business, either the staff or the employees, or the associates or the customer or the supplier. Businesses that failed during COVID weren't just the ones that were struggling to pivot. They were the ones that were so hard-nailed in system and process without giving consideration. Have you ever tested that in a national lockdown? Meanwhile, businesses that did incredibly well in lockdown, regardless of hand sanitizer and face masks, are the ones that empowered people and had systems and processes to support what they needed. And then finally, 29% of businesses fail, and these are usually the biggest growing, rapid growth businesses because they implode, because they are so concentrated on, well, marketing do this, and sales do that, and finance do the other, that they don't realize that we're all a customer of each other. And before you know it, and unintentionally, marketing is competing with sales, and sales isn't giving consideration to operations, and operations is screaming at finance, and the whole thing just implodes. And they're the three flaws. We've got to be able to have a plan.
I think that deserves a little round of applause, by the way. I enjoyed that. Yeah, so I suppose in the case of Woolworths, which was the question that kind of stimulated this, they had the 54% problem, which was, okay, they had a business plan, but it was 13 years out of date. They made many problems, or many mistakes, I guess, changing the environment, changing, with the internet coming through and all these sort of things. I'm guessing they probably also had the people, system, process.
The systems and process was so ingrained that they were fearful of change.
Too strict.
Yes.
I think there's this balance to be struck. Some people in this room are very good at structure. Very good at, aren't you, Nikki? He's looking at you now. Very good at structure, at system, at process, at order, at sequence. And that's their greatest strength, but their greatest weakness is probably they're not as flexible or creative or intuitive as they could be. And then on the flip side, you've got some people in this room that are so creative, so intuitive, operate on gut instincts and heart, but they have no bloody structure. And by the way, I know this is most of you. I've been in rooms like this enough to know that that's 80% of this group would be that camp, probably 20% would be the more structured. And so I think Woolworths probably had too much structure, not enough creativity, flexibility, not enough entrepreneurial flair, which is quite common, I think, in big companies, for sure.
Now, if I can just quickly share with you, any one of these can kill a business. But it doesn't mean to say that if you've got one of them already, that your business is destined to fail. Okay? Any one of these causes a business friction. You start to go against the tide. You're pushing against something all of the time. You can continue to go, but it will be more and more difficult. And the bigger you go, the more friction you're creating unless you address it. However, once there's two in place, once there's two of these flaws in place, it creates a glass ceiling. It creates a point, whether that's 500,000 or 20 million or 400 million, some of the companies we found before they got to a glass ceiling. But once there's two and they're fully embedded, it creates a glass ceiling and it creates more friction and more tension that's starting to be able to aggravate people within it. And you start to see a churn rate of some really good staff because they get frustrated by it and the pressure's on. Once three are in, it's now a case of when will it fail as opposed to will it fail.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge for businesses that have got all three of these in place is an understanding that you've actually just got to stop doing what you're doing, almost pull the reins back and descale in order to be able to fix the problems before you move on. Because otherwise, like Woolworths, 13 years after the third one became prevalent, they finally ran out of cash and it crashed.
So you've assessed 119,000, thanks for correcting me, businesses through this audit. I'm one of them, by the way.
You are.
And by the way, this audit is not just, a few simple questions about your business. It is comprehensive. How many questions is it?
So we've got 2 levels of audit, and you've done the more comprehensive audit because you're a bigger business and therefore it's more applicant. We've got a simple audit where we simply ask 30 quick questions on 8 different elements in your business, and then we provide a report that's more tailored to a phase 1, phase 2 type business.
And by the way, that's the simple one. The 30 questions about 5 different areas of your business, that's the simple one.
Yeah.
So the more comprehensive one is...
So we asked 153 different questions of you and your business to produce, well, I've brought your report along, Nick.
Yeah, thanks.
I didn't know whether...
So by the way, I've had the digital version of this, which I think everyone who does it gets, and you've even personalised it. That's so nice.
There you go.
So I've got the physical copy of my Add a Zero audit, as it's called. So here it is. Thank you very much. Appreciate the gift. Very generous of you. So my question really is, it's all personalised and everything, with that little logo on it. Thanks. The question is, like, what were your, when you think about, we're a small business, really. What are your specific observations around businesses like mine? Like, by the way, you know me, I'm an open book. Like, share with the audience what you observed, or what came out in this audit of some of the things we do well, some of the things we don't do so well, where we've got room for improvement. Because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people in this room, especially people that work with us, they've probably followed suit and have similar strengths to us, but also probably have similar weaknesses, and no one's perfect. So what were your observations of me, of us, our kind of businesses in this industry, in this sector?
Nick, thanks for asking.
I'm not sure I'm going to like the answer, but yeah, you're welcome. Thanks,
I'm going to say we haven't rehearsed this at all.
No.
So it's typical for people who've got a set of strengths to learn to play to those strengths. And you are a world-class marketeer, so it's evident that when we did the marketing style questions, that not only did you score well, but you scored well against 119,000 other businesses that have completed it. Likewise, we tend to fear the thing that we need to do the most, that we've probably got the less skill set or comfortability in being able to address. And therefore, we tend to farm those things out to other people. And even those other people might be really competent in what they do. There's a fear factor between the owner of a business and outsetting that information or that authority to somebody else in the business. And therefore, even though we might have scored well, as an owner, we probably scored slightly less well because we've still got that apprehension that I'm not doing it. Overall, it's typical for a business of creativity to be incredibly good at front of house. I think we could all argue that there isn't another event like this in the UK because people-centric, this is the place to be. No? Yes? No. There you go.
You had one person that agrees. Thanks everybody else for joining in.
In contrast to that, it's usually that we're a swan where there's serene above the water and everything customer focused is brilliant, and there's a mad panic paddle underneath the water in the back office to be able to keep up with everything that's been done on the front.
We wouldn't know what that feels like at all here at Expert Empires.
If I was to challenge you completely and be honest as you've invited me to do so,
Yeah.
the area where you scored the lowest is the assumption that you're going to continue to do this for the rest of your life. There wasn't little in place with regards to legacy and what happens when you hand over the mantle from being Nick James and Expert Empires continues to grow beyond your involvement in it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think somebody asked me a question yesterday in the Q&A about what scares me the most I don't know if you're in the room at the time, and I was like, the thing that scares me the most is waking up one day and going, I've done everything I want to do, and I don't really have any idea of what comes next. Like, that scares me. And so because of that fear, I probably always believe that this will be what I'm doing and that it will continue to grow. And my biggest weakness has always been, and I know my team suffer this more than anybody, is that I'm very fast-paced, but also, therefore, I think short-term. So I'm always thinking about what can we be doing this week, this month, this quarter to serve our clients better, generate more sales, market our business better. I'm looking at that kind of 1 week to 3 month window, which has always been my strength. My weakness has always been thinking a year or 5 years into the future.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not how I'm naturally wired, I think.
And forgive me, I'm not looking to be able to coach you live on stage, but if I was to give some feedback from the audit, as I shared with you yesterday, my business partner, 11 years younger than me, suffered a stroke a month ago. So it's never a case of being able to plan for the exit for when I'm 50 or when I'm 60 or once I've done this. There's an incredible importance about being able to say, what happens to my business and the employees within it if I wake up tomorrow morning and can't do what I do today? There's an incredible blessing to be able to know that when you come to work, you do it through choice and rather through the necessity.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it is our duty as business owners to think about that, especially, as you say, especially when you've got a team. Out of interest, how many in the room have got other people in your team, whether that's business partners, full-time employees, or you've got other people that help you operate the business? Yeah, it's a large percentage. I actually haven't asked that question in 2 whole days. I normally would. That's a large percentage, and so I include myself in that. I think we have a duty to make sure that we have contingencies in place because a lot of people rely on us. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, just to put that into context, my first ever business, I was on a rapid growth. We were all for the door. We were all for, how big can we get this? What's the market size and how much of it can we poach? We went from 4 staff to 17 staff in just short of 2 years. And then our key customer went bust. We were suppliers to Woolworths when Woolworths went under. And I ended up, even though I was a serviceman, I was 2 years in hospital when I left the military, making 7 people redundant as a direct result of the impact that Woolworths had on us and our business is still a scar I wear really, really badly. Knowing that they'd put their faith in me to offer them employment, and through the decisions that I'd made, thinking that we were scaling a business without doing the sufficient due diligence, put them and their jobs and their livelihoods and their mortgages at risk. And it's something that 15 years later I still wear badly. I think we've all got a moral responsibility for the people that are in our team, in our tribe.
Of all the audits you've done, which business has come out most impressively from that? What's the superstar, the shining light, the one that you did the audit and you were like, this business is nailing it. It's got everything that it needs in place. It's like the poster child for everything you talk about, apart from us, obviously. What business could you tell us about that's absolutely nailing it in these areas?
The scary thing is that I'm having to rack my brains.
Yeah. Which, by the way, in itself is insightful, isn't it?
Of the 119,000 surveys, I would put people, not of the 3 floors or the 5 categories or anything like that type of stuff, I put all businesses that do the survey into one of 3 camps. There's about 41% of businesses that we audit that are, say, winging it. They're doing exceptionally well, and the things that we're identifying will eventually catch up with them unless they do something about it. We've caught them before they've got to the bottleneck, before they've got to the glass ceiling. And as long as they listen to what we've suggested to them in the audit reports, that's likely to break the ceiling before they get there. there's about another 39.5% that we do the audit, and they are so system and heavy and structure. They're so cautious and due diligence that we look at it and we think, well, we've got very little to offer you, other than the fact that you need to catch up. Your competition are flying away from you and you're getting left behind. The rate of growth in business, of commerce, of UK PLC, is at a rapid rate of knots right now. And AI is just going to be able to see that grow even faster. And there's some businesses that are so caught up in the doing things right that they haven't learned how to get out of first or second gear. The scary thing is that leaves about 8% of businesses that are between the two, that have understood the needs to be able to have some structure whilst continuing to accelerate, and they've got a marry up of the two. So, some of our clients, we've seen them go from sub 100,000s to 8 figures in 5 years because they've understood the needs to be able to accelerate and when to cruise, rather than hit the accelerator and then bump into a brick wall.
So you've been here for the last 2 days. You know my community. You've probably spoke to people over the last 2 days. What observations have you got? What advice would you in the few minutes we've got left, what advice would you give to this community, to this room, based on the observations you've made?
I think we can all agree that the last 2 days have probably given you an absolute headache with the amount of notes that you've written, with the amount of content that you've been given, with the amount of ideas and inspiration and consideration. There's no reason why any one of us couldn't leave from today and not sleep for the next 4 years implementing all of the things that have been suggested.
I'm going to take that as a compliment. I'm going to choose to take it as a compliment.
There's just masses of content that come from every time we come to Expert Empires. The downside is the fact that for the majority of this audience, and I'll just say this with love, the risk is that you'll go back and on Monday morning it becomes shelf development. It'll sit there on a shelf and you think, well, I've spent the last 2 days out of my business, all of those emails, all of those missed calls, I'll get back to doing some of the things that I learned once I've caught up with the day-to-day. Or I'm going to stop everything that I've previously done. I've realized that I'm doing it all wrong. I'm going to just apply everything that I've learned to not sleep for the next 4 years. And the simple fact is that the report shows people not just what's missing. I like to think of it as the missing jigsaw pieces in your picture. But it'll also tell you when you need to give consideration to them. Because there's no point, as Nick says, there's no point doing phase 4 content in a phase 1 business. So understanding from all of the content that you've taken today, what's the one key bit of information that's going to make the biggest difference to the business, that when you've made that and implemented it and nailed it, you can come back to the next sheet and say, so what else do I need to learn?
So you've had 119,000 people now come through this audit. We said that we would give the Expert Empires audience the opportunity to participate in that and get a little audit for your business as well. I think this is the 30-question version.
Well, we've put a QR code on the screen that simply asks, what shape is your business in? And we're offering 2 choices. You go onto the QR code, you'll finish through the landing page, and there's either the free audit for phase 1, phase 2, or if you're in phase 3, phase 4, and you want something significantly more complex, then there's a link to be able to book a course to determine as to what that looks like.
Amazing. So, scan the code. You can't scan it. Is it because you're at the wrong angle, Natasha, maybe? Okay, well, we'll leave it up for a sec. Is there a link for it, Jay, as well?
There wasn't. I'm a novice at this, no.
There you go. Natasha's committed. She's got out of her seat. She's going to go and make it work.
Thank you,
I like
Natasha.
that. I like your commitment. Scan the code and you can go ahead and take the audit in your own time. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Mr. Jay Allen. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Great job.